You are most welcome to this video, and I'm delighted for the first time to welcome to the channel Sonia Elijah. Sonia, thank you so much for coming on. I've been following your work for some time.
Thank you so much, John, for having me on, and I'm very excited to be here with you today.
I've been reading through your book, which we'll come on to in a minute, and there's so many things in there. I thought, oh yeah, I remember that, and you've documented it all really nicely. And at the risk of being too sycophantic, I've been reading through this over the past couple of days. And it's very tight. So lots of things I suspected you give the evidence for. Lots of things people that leave comments on my videos think, oh, I think that's maybe a bit dodgy there, or there's corruption there. You actually unpack it chapter and verse. You've got nearly 1,000 references in this book where you actually unpack it. Just to begin with, though, I've heard of 9/11, 3/11. Just remind us.
Yes. So 3/11. It refers to March the 11th, 2020, and that is when the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic, and essentially our world changed forever.
Yep. Just before you wrote this book, I mean, you are a journalist, Sonia. Is that your sort of background?
Yes. So I've been doing investigative reporting, probably past 5 years. I've been doing that.
Yeah.
The book is really a culmination of 5 years of my investigations, but I would say the last 3.5 years was when I was really sort of focusing on the book and putting that together.
Yep. You know, I've often said to many people, especially looking back 2020, 2021, 2022, I've said to people, where are the investigative journalists? And you've now answered the question. They are there. They've come out. The point is that at the time, we weren't allowed to hear from you. And It's only with time that we've made these connections and realised there is very high calibre investigative journalism going on. And I found your book very readable. And I'm not a great reader. And I have marked quite a few dissertations in my career, and this was as tightly argued as any of those, Sonia. It's tightly argued and it's referenced. This is not wild conspiracy theories. So maybe let's start off before the pandemic, shall we? And then we want to reflect on the implications through the pandemic, and of course the implications for now and the future, which are massive. Massive. You know, I and quite a few of my viewers do fear a coming dystopia. And that's what a lot of this is about. But start us off before 2019, the sort of pre-pandemic lead up. Is that roughly where your investigation started?
Yes. So the book starts with a timeline. There's an appendix in the front of the book, and I start from the early 2019, and I go through to essentially September 2021. But if we start at 2019, what that tells us is these sort of pandemic exercises that were going on. So from January through to August 2019, we have Crimson Contagion, which was led by Lieutenant Colonel Robert Cadleck, who is a key figure in the whole COVID response, especially in the US. And with Crimson Contagion, essentially it is a group of US tourists that travel to China. They contract a novel virus, bring it back, and it spreads through United States. So it was like a pandemic simulation exercise. But also, so that was quite crucial. But I think even more so was the second one. This was now in October 2019. You had Event 201 happening. Now, this was the Johns Hopkins Center. It was partnered with the World Economic Forum and the Gates Foundation. And what that revealed was striking. These officials got together, and out of that they made the decision that something had to be done with misinformation, disinformation. And you have them basically doing these recommendations, and one of those is that the governments, so the public sector, need to work with the private sector, with social media companies, technology, in creating nimble approaches to countering dis and misinformation in order for the next pandemic. So it's all about preparing for the next pandemic, the response to it. So they really highlight this countering misinformation as being like they have to deal with this problem. And is it so telling that, it's working with social media companies. And what did we see play out post 3/11? The following year, we saw rampant, widespread, coordinated, systematic censorship be unleashed against the public.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was censored at the time myself. I had the first video I had censored was with Dr. Pierre Corey. Yeah. And this was probably about a week after he'd testified before Senate, but then he wasn't allowed to make YouTube videos, which is just absolutely ludicrous. So these rehearsals, as it were, beforehand, before officially anyone had ever heard of the actual SARS coronavirus 2, that they were very well prognosticated, you could say. They kind of worked out, given that all the pandemic scenarios that could have unfolded, they were uncannily close. Very good speculators and very good simulators, you might say, to be so accurate. Yes. Almost prophetic, in fact.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And the censorship is a big theme in your book, Sonia. Do you want to tell us what you've learned?
There's the censorship begins from the beginning, John. So the first 2 chapters is on the origins of the virus. So it's locking in the narrative.
Yeah.
And the second chapter is cracks in the narrative. So there were three papers in 3 pillar papers in prestigious journals that basically locked in the origin, how the virus came about. It was, from a wet market. It was a zoonotic virus. It jumped from one species to another to humans, and it completely dismissed the lab origin theory. And what you have is that you have a group of leading scientists, including Sir Jeremy Farrar, you've got Christian Drosten, you've got Peter Daszak, you've got all of these key figures. And the first statement, so you start with the Lancet, and that was around mid-February 2020. That gets published in the Lancet, and it's a joint letter, a joint statement saying, I actually have it written down here. We stand together to strongly condemn conspiracy theories suggesting COVID-19 does not have a natural origin. Isn't that interesting? So that's February 19th. If we go back 19 days prior, so February 1st, this is the key secret teleconference call that takes place with Anthony Fauci, led by Jeremy Farrar, right? Christian Drosten, all the key players are there. In this conference call, they have to immediately call each other to decide what they're going to do. And my first chapter and the second one really dives into the Freedom of Information Act released emails of Dr. Anthony Fauci, who was leading NIAID at the time in the US. And what those reveal is that privately, they all believed that the virus came from a lab. That was highly plausible. But publicly, they were going to come together, condemn that as a conspiracy theory, and just present that it was totally natural in origin. So that is really interesting. And if you look at that joint Lancet statement, I think 26 out of the 27 scientists involved had links with the Wuhan Institute of Virology, direct links, or its funders. So isn't that very telling? So you have major conflicts of interest happening there. You have a crackdown completely dismissing the natural origin of the virus. I mean, anyone who was questioning it to be, labeled as a conspiracy theorist.
Or a racist, in fact.
Or racist, exactly. Yeah. And they were just going to push a single approved narrative. So they operated in unity on that. It was very strategic. Then you have two other papers coming out, again locking in that natural origin story. And anyone talking about the fact that it could come from a lab were labeled, you know, dangerous and racist and conspiracy theories, so, or ultra right wing or whatever. So it started from the beginning. I just want to make that clear, and also throughout, you know, going. I mean, obviously the book spans 5 years, but you've got also the testing protocols. The book really goes, you know, deep analysis on the flaws of that, and also the, you know, the way they pushed that to justify lockdowns. And it was based on flawed testing. So you have the scandals of the PCR test. So Christian Drosten, German virologist, and he was key because it's interesting. If we go back to my timeline, January 10th is when the genomic virus is uploaded to virological.org. Okay, this is but from Edward Holmes. And that gets uploaded. So the whole world gets, you know, this is January 10th. 3 days later, on January 13th, you have Christian Drosten having his PCR protocol being adopted, accepted by the World Health Organization. This is months before they declare COVID-19 to be a pandemic. It gets accepted by the WHO as the gold standard, and there are so many conflicts of interest in that, tied in with that paper. The scientific paper associated with that protocol is the Corman-Drosten paper, which gets submitted to Eurosurveillance, I think towards more the end of January that year. And who happens to be the editor of Eurosurveillance? It's Christian Drosten. And the co-authors of that paper are tied to the very biotech company based in Berlin, who were the first out of the gate to send PCR testing kits around the world, right? So, I mean, major conflicts of interest. You also have the myth of the asymptomatic spread, okay? And Christian Drosten's also involved in that. There was an explosive German paper that came out, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, saying that I think it's to do with a Chinese tourist coming back to the US, and this person, she did not have any symptoms. She was asymptomatic, but she was able to spread the virus everywhere. That paper was proved to be flawed. Who happened to be the co-author of that paper is Christian Drosten. And my book goes into that quite in detail, because there's also emails from Anthony Fauci saying, you know, yes, it's all about this, that the virus is being spread by people with no symptoms. And this is what they pushed on the public, right? They have the mass testing because people with no symptoms can be spreading the virus. He then has to backtrack because a journalist writing for, I think, Science magazine is questioning Fauci, saying, look, apparently this paper is flawed. She did have symptoms, this tourist, because she was questioned later. And Fauci then has to backtrack and go, oh, what I said was actually right at the time, because I have officials in China who are telling me it's all about asymptomatic spread. But yes, the paper seems to be flawed. And then he actually says, most transmission is driven by the symptomatic, not asymptomatic. But in public, what was he saying in public? It was all about asymptomatic spread. So these are just some prime examples of all the anomalies, all the contradictions, all the conflicts of interest, which is rampant through the book.
It's almost like these group of people were sort of caught on the hop, or someone suddenly put the lights on when they're in a compromised position, and then they thought, oh, let's get our story together before we go and see the policeman.
Yes, absolutely. And so, gosh, I mean, we could talk about the lockdowns. We could talk about PCR tests, the lateral flow tests, right?
Let's talk. Should we talk a bit more about the? Let's talk a little more about the viral origins, maybe, to begin with. I mean,
okay.
why were they so keen to say it couldn't have been from a laboratory? Why were they so keen to say it was a natural origin when the evidence clearly now is well against it being a natural origin?
Yeah. So what is interesting, John, is that there was a paper from a group of Indian scientists. I don't know if you remember. This was around February 2020 by Pradham et al. And these scientists, they highlighted the fact that they appeared to be 4 HIV-like inserts with regards to the spike protein of the virus. And they said, whoa, this is really uncanny, the similarity between HIV. So that paper got published. I think it was February 3rd of 2020. You have emails, the book exposes. I mean, there's so many exhibits in this book. Really it does act like a live indictment of what went on.
The evidence is systematically arranged. That's
absolutely. So that's the driving force of the book. So Fauci is emailing, I think it's Francis Collins or another group of his cronies.
Yeah.
Or we do something about this paper. It's really outlandish, 3 days later, after the paper gets published, it gets withdrawn by the authors because there's such widespread condemnation about this article. So I'm just tying that in because you're asking about the origins and why. So essentially, they're covering their tracks, okay? Yeah. Because we know that NIAID was giving major funding to EcoHealth Alliance. EcoHealth Alliance is a US company who was led by Peter Daszak at the time, doing obviously gain of function research. And you have the diffuse proposal. Now, diffuse it's a leak. So essentially, this is a grant proposal that EcoHealth were asking for money from the NIH. And
that's the United States National Institutes of Health funders. Yeah.
Yes, it was asking for $14 million for a grant, proposing work with the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And they submitted that to DARPA. And what did DARPA do?
What's DARPA, Sonia?
DARPA is sort of like it's a part of the Pentagon, essentially. It's quite secretive. It's military technology.
Military research.
Yes, military research, exactly. And DARPA refused it because they deemed it as too risky, because it was obvious in the proposal that they were doing gain of function research.
Yes.
So, and Fauci is tied up with that, right? You've got Peter Daszak tied up with that. And these are all the people. Peter Daszak was one of the co-signatories of that joint Lancet statement I was talking about, who are widely condemning that anyone saying, that it's not natural origin, they're a conspiracy theorist. So it's like unpicking a lot, so the book, I mean, I do it as sort of you're weaving or putting pieces of a puzzle together. Yeah. And the more pieces I found, it's like, wow, this is crazy. This is such a scandal. And it just led me to another until I built, and essentially that's how the book came about.
Yeah, that's what you've done. I mean, hopefully, I mean, this would constitute a file of evidence for some international police organisation, if such a thing were to be interested. But one of the main complaints I get in my comments is that just the sheer lack of accountability. That people have done this and just dusted the hands and walked off onto the next job. The revolving door type thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we've got viral origins. I mean, the big concern there, of course, is we would assume that this gain of function research is still being done. It's just they've moved on to the next I mean, we can't possibly know this, But, one covert or semi-covert operation has been exposed. What covert operations are going on now, we don't know. Could it be with more dangerous viruses? I mean, I find that really quite frightening, because the virus that happened to escape, thankfully, had relatively low pathogenicity. But we could have one escaping that was really quite a nasty virus and killed half of us. I mean, that is not, that is not ludicrous at all. The censorship. Moving on to the censorship, I think not only were individuals censored, but the scientific process was censored.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Dr. Polycretus just a week or two ago, and he's actually written a paper about the fact that he couldn't get his paper published. This particular one was links of cancer after vaccine. But what have you found out about the censorship of science, the publishing process?
Oh, yeah.
The scientific publishing process, as well as individual scientists and doctors?
Yeah. Okay. Well, we could start again from the beginning, even with the lockdowns, let's say. Who were the scientists arguing against the lockdowns? And this will lead to the Great Barrington Declaration.
Yeah.
So we have Dr. Sunetra Gupta, Jay Bhattacharya, Martin Kulldorff. These were the three founding scientists who sort of spurred on the Great Barrington Declaration. Yeah. And essentially they were for not locking down. I think just protecting the vulnerable. Everyone should go about their business. Yeah. Everyone who's young, healthy, so they were really, it was the stand against lockdowns. They were branded as dangerous and fringe epidemiologists. We have emails from Francis Collins, which is in the book, saying, what these three, fringe. Fringe and it's so funny because it's exactly.
Jay Bhattacharya now, of course, is in charge of the National Institutes of Health.
And I wrote about that, of course, in the book. Yeah. Not bad for a fringe.
Not bad for a fringe guy, no.
And so they was real.
They were attacked. Yeah.
They were real. They were really brutal. Real backlash against them. But I'm going to get to the science and I'm going to get to all the articles. But I also want to talk a bit about the censorship of the early COVID treatments that were going on.
Yes.
So you've got hydroxychloroquine. Actually, the beginning was hydroxychloroquine, and this is with Vladimir Zelenko. He was a doctor from Brooklyn, New York, of the Hasidic community, who was had a protocol going on with, I think, hydroxychloroquine and zinc and azithromycin and
doxycycline.
Yes. And then also in France, we had Dr. Didier Raoult with his Marseille protocol, again using hydroxychloroquine. What happened around that time is that I think it was in May 2021, you have this study coming out, being published, I believe it was in the Lancet, and it was all against how dangerous hydroxychloroquine is. And it was published in the Lancet, and it was saying that hydroxychloroquine causes heart problems. And it was based on, I think, on 96,000 patients. So it's a huge data set. It was published in the Lancet. This is the Mehra et al. Study. And what came out of that is that was based on faked data. And this is all about the Surgisphere scandal. Surgisphere was the unknown company from Chicago who were giving these large data sets out. It originated from Surgisphere. They actually had to retract that study because so many people condemned it, that it was faked data, right? Faked science. But out of that, despite the fact that it was retracted, you had all the media companies, BBC, New York Times, jumping on how dangerous hydroxychloroquine is, labeling it Trump's drug kills people, right? Because Trump at the time was promoting hydroxychloroquine. You have the WHO suspending all their hydroxychloroquine trial arms, going on. You have in the UK, I think Oxford University was also doing a trial. They suspended it, and the FDA revoked the emergency use authorization for the drug, for the anti-malarial drug hydroxychloroquine. So it was a very strategic strategy,
multi-pronged, yeah.
Multi-pronged to take down hydroxychloroquine, all based on...
Interesting that various doctors around the world had independently discovered how effective it was.
Yes.
In terms of safety, I mean, I've been giving out chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine for decades. I actually interviewed Professor Robert Clancy, the immunologist in Australia. And I think as an immunologist, he estimated he'd prescribed hydroxychloroquine about, I can't remember, it was many thousands of times, about 50,000 times or something in his career. You know, it's a well-established drug that all of a sudden was just shut down. It just
shut down. Yes, absolutely shut down. And not only that, you have the suppression, blacklisting of ivermectin, the antiparasitic drug. And I did a lot of research on that, a lot of articles I've written on that. And again, the doctors, scientists promoting that they lost their medical licenses.
Yes.
They were treated, they were demonized, and they were accused of killing people. Then you have the infamous FDA tweet. Do you remember at the time, "You're not a horse, you're not a horse." That was, again, I have internal emails within the FDA officials boasting how well that tweet did, how it went viral. It was like the second most popular tweet of all time. So it was, again, a coordinated suppression, censorship coming from the FDA, right? So many people, and we know there were many studies at the time, systematic meta-analysis of how effective those drugs were for treating early COVID, right? But you have it was never allowed to succeed, never allowed to sort of reach, and it was so hard to get, right? You couldn't, the countries were banning it.
Still is remarkably difficult. In Australia there was doctors struck off for prescribing ivermectin. The thing that convinced me about the efficacy of ivermectin was the Jackie Stone work in Zimbabwe.
Yes.
So Dr. Stone actually worked at a hospital where there was no oxygen. There was no oxygen. And patients were coming in, and she gave them ivermectin as the mainstay of treatment. And within 12 hours, their oxygen saturations were coming up, just breathing normal air. And tragically, Jackie took her own life.
I know.
A few years later, I mean, I've never got to the bottom of that. But and again, I've interviewed Professor Colin Aldis on this. And there's no question, she's reviewed the data, and this is accurate data. Tess Laurie, of course, has done a lot of work on it. Pierre Corey wrote the whole book, the war against ivermectin, and he was the first person. It was talking to Pierre way back that convinced me that this was an efficacious preparation for all sorts of reasons, and just systematically suppressed. I mean, why on earth would people want to suppress something that can save lives, Sonia?
Because it's a cheap, generic drug, repurposed drug. And one of the conditions, actually the main prerequisite for emergency use authorization of the COVID shots was that there was no existing treatment for COVID-19. That is the condition, and they had to have that condition met in order to usher in the novel mRNA technology platform. So I mean,
if doctors had been allowed to publish early, people had listened to them, like Dr. Corey and Dr. Stone, and just spread this information around the world. People's lives could have been saved with ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine type protocols, we believe. Maybe with some zinc and some other antibiotics as well, but an oxygen and basic supportive care, and antibiotics when appropriate, of course. And the fact that people seem to pretend that these treatments didn't exist allowed them to authorize the use of the novel vaccine genetic preparations.
Yes.
But why would they want to use these novel preparations? Surely they are experimental. Why would they want to experiment on half the population of the planet?
Okay, well, so that brings us to the kind of history of the mRNA tech, the rise of that in conjunction with the rise of Moderna. So the book talks about that a lot, and we know that from 2010, around 2010, you have a DARPA program manager talking about what if or what if event that we could bring in a vaccine that wouldn't take like 10 years or whatever. We could develop it in months, right? We could use an mRNA technology to bring about a vaccine in a month. So they were talking about that from 2010. You have a key grants being given to Moderna, millions and millions given by DARPA at the time to Moderna, holding Mark Moderna's hand in bringing about that. But what is really interesting is that you have pre-311, neither BioNTech nor Moderna could get any of their mRNA tech products approved, bring it to market. They always failed the safety testing. They couldn't get past phase 1 trial.
Yep.
Because the lipid nanoparticle this is what is encased. So the modified mRNA is encased in this lipid nanoparticles were proven to be highly toxic. And that was from the beginning. And they never were able to rectify that, right? And the book really just highlight that. Those issues, those safety issues were never resolved. And we know that the synthetic messenger RNA, which is the code used for the cell to produce these spike proteins, the body couldn't recognize it, and it was prone to ribosomal frame shifting.
Yeah.
And we know there was a landmark study by actually Cambridge University, that was that Cambridge study that showed that, but they downplayed the harms. It was quite strategic. They said, we don't know what proteins are being expressed, that apparent unintended proteins causing immunological triggers are going on, but it's not harmful. They're downplaying the harms. It just needs to be fine-tuned. Okay. My investigations on BioNTech's testing that they had to show to the FDA and the EMA to prove the fidelity of their product, they had to do Western blot tests, right, to show that it was only the spike protein being expressed by their modified mRNA.
So this is a test basically which will look at a bit of soup, for example, where a collection of molecules, and it will separate them out into the individual molecular species, so you can see what is in this mixture.
And it's
done identify the individual bits and bobs in there.
Yes, and it's done by their molecular weight. I think it's in kilodaltons or something.
Yeah.
So, right, I had an anonymous source provide me with evidence that these BioNTech, who we know partnered with Pfizer to bring about were copied and pasted. So this person was able to provide evidence that across, and it was 4 batches of the vaccine. This was what the Western blot tested for, across 6 different concentrations. And it showed that they were copied and pasted in groups. And I think the odds of that happening, identical, was like next to nil. Okay. So it looked very manipulated, but it fabricated, essentially. That's what it looked like. So that's quite alarming, isn't it? And this just went past the FDA, EMA. They greenlit it. Even though they were questioning, I mean, my book also shows evidence of, the kilodalton for this spike protein should be this, but that's missing there. And it's just a lot of anomalies. So really, the EMA were aware that something was going on, and they were aware of of immunological harms that this could trigger.
Because it's producing basically random proteins.
Random proteins.
Because
and we know
the RNA that was given was not natural RNA like the body's used to having. It was a synthesized, modified, non-physiological, non-native biochemical RNA that was producing different proteins because the code was shifting. There was shifting of the triplet code, and
absolutely.
I guess we still don't know what aberrant proteins were made from that.
It's unknown. It's unknown. Yeah, and the fact that their evidence, this is BioNTech's evidence to prove again the fidelity of their product looks fabricated, is very, very alarming. So that's, I mean, I could just, keep going on and on. But they're going back to censorship, right? So the censoring of the science. So a lot of the articles, so I mean, even if we go back to ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, any of those studies, peer-reviewed studies showing real positive results were basically, they were forced to retract, get withdrawn. They were outright rejected by journals. I mean, Pierre Corey, I also interview him. One of my interviews with him is also in the book. But not only that, you had a group of these sort of self-proclaimed fraud detectives going about targeting only the studies showing that ivermectin had positive results. They completely ignored the studies that didn't show there was much benefit, and which actually were proven, some of them, to be flawed and fraudulent.
Yeah.
But they went after the ones that were showing ivermectin in a positive light, which is interesting. And they had ties also with, I mean, my book goes into that as well.
And the reason for this was that allowed them to say there was no drugs effective against the virus. Therefore, we have to have these novel products. It was all to get these vaccines.
Absolutely. Is
that the motivation for all this?
Absolutely. It was to show that, you can't have a cheap generic drug, being an effective treatment for COVID-19. We have to wait for this savior vaccine to come about, right? And
it's got to be clever, it's got to be high tech, it's got to be expensive, or it's no good.
It's not a vaccine. So the book really talks about that. This is a gene-based product. It's a gene therapy product. Even in BioNTech's filings, Moderna filings, you have them classifying their product as gene therapy.
Yeah.
So, but it was never tested as a gene therapy product. No. It was used, it's like a Trojan horse. They dressed it up as a vaccine because they could get away with so much. Now, I was one of the early journalists. I even went on GB News a few years ago talking about this.
Neil Oliver.
Yes. And I dug into, this is late 2021. I was digging into the Pfizer data dump. This is the Pfizer documents that were released by the FDA via court order, because a group of medical professionals, including, I think, Dr. Peter McCullough, was instrumental in this, in asking for free.
These are the ones they wanted to hide for the next 70 years.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. They wanted the public to wait. I think eventually it ended up, they wanted the public to wait to 2096.
Yeah. Anyway. I mean, I'll be retired by then, I would have thought.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
Dead.
Yes. So that immediately the alarm bells go, what are they hiding?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So these documents were released in batches. So late 2021, I was diving through that, going through thousands of these documents.
So you're actually going through the primary release documents.
Yeah. I've done that. So, and I did that for Trial Site News.
That is a lot of work.
Yeah. So I went through and I looked at the cumulative adverse events report. This was the first 90 days, the first 3 months of after the rollout of the vaccine. So that was quite a damning report that was hidden within these papers that I found. And it showed that already 1,228 deaths, following the COVID shot.
Yeah.
48,000 safety adverse events reported, 8 pages of adverse events, all the different types. But I want to take you back prior. So this is really damning, and this is in the book. In October 2020, you have an important meeting going on. This is October 22, 2020. This is a few months before emergency use authorization is given. You have an FDA slide, an FDA safety surveillance of COVID-19 vaccines. That was the name of the slide. And it's as a presentation slide within this meeting. And it was the VRBPAC meeting. This is the FDA's advisory body on vaccines. And it was like an 8-hour meeting. It's on YouTube, so anyone can watch it. The screenshot of it is in the book. For a split second, literally it's like 1 second, a slide flashes on and then it disappears. But you can catch it, and it's in the book. And it shows the working list of possible adverse events. And there's dozens of it. This is, again, October 20, to do with the COVID shots, strokes, deaths, seizures, myocarditis, pericarditis, GBS, all of these things, all these blood clotting issues as well. All of it listed. It was on their radar. They knew about it months prior. So I see that really as like the smoking gun slide of like, they knew of the harms. We know what went on in the trials. So I dug through a lot of the clinical trial. This is Pfizer's clinical trial documents. And I found so many anomalies there of case reports being retroactively, misclassified. I even found the third missing death. So in the, there was a cutoff data point, and they said that there were, I think, 2 deaths in the vaccine arm, and I think 4 in the non-vaccine arm, in the placebo arm. And that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. And that was a few days before EUA was granted by the FDA. In that report...
Just before emergency use approval.
Yes. So when I was digging through all these trial participants, all their data, all their case, the case report forms, I found a third death. I think it was a man in his 70s who died, but that death was never registered. It was because he was withdrawn from the trial. But that should have been part of the and I make an argument because there was another death that they had that was just after the cutoff that was included. And I think, well, why didn't they include his death? Because that was around the same time, but his wasn't, because they misclassified it. So it just got withdrawn as opposed to death. There usually is a code death. So that increases the death rate by 50%, when you're thinking from 2 to 3. And I wrote about this, and I remember even, I think another newspaper publication picked up on my article, and they got banned from X, from Twitter. This is when it was Twitter.
Yep.
I think the Daily Skeptic actually wrote about that in my report, and they got kicked off Twitter. Anyway, that talks about censorship, doesn't it? But not only that, I first discovered, and I did break the story of this, and I spoke to Clayton Morris of Redacted about this. This was a few years ago. I found Pfizer's pregnancy and lactation review. Yeah. And in that, now this is really disturbing, because this review was signed off on April 20th, 2021. Okay. Now, in that review, it wasn't a very long review. It was like 8 pages. And it was all the harms to pregnant women, to fetuses. And it was so disturbing because it was babies born very prematurely and then dying, a lot of miscarriages, spontaneous abortions, and all of these things. And they have it terms. This is Pfizer's own data, exposed to the vaccine transplacentally, through the placenta or through transmammary route. So this is breastfeeding infants. So babies being affected by the breast milk of vaccinated mothers. Now, remember what they told us at the time. They said that the vaccine just stays in your arm.
Yeah.
No, we know
They also said it was safe in pregnancy.
I know. Now, this report, the reason why I'm mentioning this date of April 20th, 2021, is 3 days later, April 23rd, 2021, you have the CDC pushing these COVID shots on pregnant women. And we had that all globally, health. We had it here in the UK with the NHS.
Well, we had the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists telling us the vaccine was safe for pregnant women.
Yes.
As I remember it.
And it was far, far from safe, right? Far from safe.
We had doctors on TV saying it was safe in pregnancy.
Yeah. And we know it crossed the placenta, it went to the breast milk, and all of these things. So that all got, that all got set. Yeah. I mean, anyone talking about that was, deemed.
So these doctors and august societies that said it was okay for pregnant women to have it, they were analysing the data that was publicly available.
Yeah.
So in a sense, they were only culpable of naivety for not believing that all the data was available, or was the complicity, do you think, going down to national authorising bodies?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't do their due diligence. I mean, the data was being hidden, right?
Well, that's the best you can say about it, isn't it? They didn't do due diligence.
Yeah, didn't do due diligence, absolutely. And also, don't forget, is that they were receiving, I think this is in the US, the main, I think, I think it's called ARCOG. It's the Royal, it's the same group with obstetricians, doctors in the US.
Yeah.
They received so much funding from Pfizer.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, you have major conflicts of interest. And I wrote an article talking about that as well.
Well, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency in the UK, I forget the figure, is it 78% funded by industry? The last BMJ publication on it was something like that. I mean, it's just...
It's very high. And don't forget, we have Dame June Raines saying that MHRA needs to transition and become the enabler and not, that's quite a famous quote that she says, the enabling agency. And they really did enable, and they enabled the pharmaceutical industry to get away with many crimes, I would say. But I mean, going back to the censorship of the science and the data, there's a lot we can talk about there. So you have also, we know there was censoring of the harms. So any of these sort of scientific articles, literature, peer-reviewed, exposing the harms, you have, like, I think Peter McCullough, so many of his papers. There was one key one on autopsy, showing how so many died from the vaccine that got pulled. You have so many across the board on that, talking with for example, I interviewed Dr. Jessica Rose. She co-wrote a paper with Peter McCullough. Now, this is very interesting. This was a study done that they did back in 2021. They were the first to sort of I think it was based on the Israeli data coming out, how that there was a increased risk of myocarditis in males, adolescent males, teenage boys, okay? Specifically after the second shot. I mean, they did the data, they followed all that, and they were looking at VAERS as well. I think it was based on VAERS data. So VAERS is the US, pharmacovigilance database. And that study got withdrawn. They got forced. It got into a journal. It was there it survived for like a little time, and then it got rejected. It got withdrawn. Just a few days before they were voting, the FDA or their VRBPAC committee, on whether they were going to roll out the Pfizer shot to 5 to 11-year-olds. So it was a pivotal study that could have made a difference if it had lived, but it got withdrawn. It couldn't survive. and you had that key vote. And if you remember, you had Dr. Eric Rubin at the time, who also happened to be editor of the New England Journal of Medicine, who also sits as a on the FDA board, saying we won't know if the vaccine is safe until we roll it out. He's on record saying that, and that is also in the book. So I mean, that's crazy, right? That's just essentially the public were used as guinea pigs, and I also talk about the pinnacle of the sort of experiment that goes on is that we know that there were two different processes, manufacturing processes. With the Pfizer shot, I'm sure you were aware of this, John. You have process 1 and you have process 2.
Yeah, Josh Getsko did this work, didn't he, in Israel?
Now, Josh Getsko, amazing senior lecturer, I think at Hebrew University.
Yeah.
I interviewed him quite a few years ago, and he talked about Pfizer's bait and switch. That's what he classified it as. He also said, very importantly, with a biological product, which is what these shots are, they're biological products, the process is the product.
Yep.
So if you change the process, you're going to get a different product.
Yeah.
The clinical trials of the Pfizer clinical trials were done on process 1.
Yep.
Which was they used PCR as a template. They used magnetic beads to clean it out. It was a kind of like a cleaner product, I would say.
Very pure product.
A pure, yes. And those were the small scale clinical batches.
Yeah.
Process 2 was en masse, the commercial batches that were rolled out to the public. Those were
using E. coli, I believe.
Exactly, plasmid E. coli, that E. coli bacteria. And what did they find? What did independent scientists find? Early 2023, we've got Kevin McKernan, who is the lead, he's a genomicist and genomics expert. He comes out independently with his lab. He discovers billions to hundreds of billions of fragments of DNA, plasmid DNA, in the Pfizer vials and in Moderna's Pfizer vials. But not only that, I think with Pfizer's vials, they found also SV40 enhancer promoter sequences. And we know that's, oncogenic, that it can lead to cancer risks. Insertional mutagenesis goes into the nucleus of the cell and can create cancers. Now, going back to process 1, process 2, again, the product rolled out to the public never went through clinical trial. It was process 1. Now, process 2, they were going to do a bridging study, a bridging trial. And my book talks about this, and I have documents, screenshots. But Pfizer chose not to do it. They were going to do it on 250 participants, but they decided to suspend it because the product was already being rolled out. So why do it? That's in there. That's their reasoning for doing it, for not doing it.
We interviewed David Speaker, who replicated this work in Canada.
Oh, David, yes.
Found DNA, found SV40.
Yes. So this was replicated, and Philip Buchholz, who was with the University of South Carolina, and he spoke to he gave a testimony to the USC Senate at the time, and saying that this is crazy what's going on. This can be a huge risk of cancer. So he independently found that too. So these findings were not just one lab. They were replicated. Apparently even FDA, even high school students found that. There was a study done that was published by high school students that found also DNA contamination as well. So it's mind-boggling, right? And again, we have Dame June Rain, head of the MHRA. This is during the COVID inquiry, and my book gets a lot of transcripts from those testimonies during the COVID inquiry. She's on record saying, "I thought the process was the same." So she's totally sidestepping. No idea, apparently. She's the head of the MHRA, and she's clueless on this, apparently. And she's saying also,
so it would appear.
Yes, so it would appear. And so this is another damning finding. And also all of their again, these articles again are getting withdrawn, suppressed. You've got also the vaccine injured, how they were treated. We could talk a bit about the Trusted News Initiative if you wanted to.
There's so many things.
There's so many things, John. Yeah, I could go on and on.
I mean, these medical journals were like, it was almost like Holy Scripture. If it was in the medical journals, that was it. We had the Lancet, we had New England Journal of Medicine. I remember in 2020 saying, look, if it's in these journals, this is good stuff.
I know.
It's what I'd based my teaching on for the last sort of 30 years.
Yes.
And yet this whole rug is just pulled from underneath you. I mean, what is the underlying motivation of this? Is it just these big pharma and vested interests trying to make money? Is this just about money or power? I mean, what?
Yeah.
Why did they do these things?
Yeah, I mean, these are really good questions, John. I mean, it's mind-boggling. You don't what they kind of got away with, really.
Yeah.
But I would say these journals are heavily compromised. I think not by direct funding from not from advertising money with the pharmaceuticals. The pharmaceutical companies buy the actual hard copy prints, which are very expensive, and they end up buying these the actual, the prints, the copies, the hard copy articles. So that's how they make their money, I think, and I think I was talking to Dr. Robert Malone, who was exposing that fact.
Yeah.
It could have been Pierre Corey, I can't remember. But yes, they are definitely compromised, and they're definitely not independent. And, you have the whole pub peer scandal. I interviewed, again, it was David Speaker, Jessica Rose, Kevin McKernan, because their DNA contamination paper is under retraction, because you have pub peer, this network, which they dub as pub smear, who go after these articles, these papers, these scientific papers, and try and get them retracted. And they have complete conflicts of interest, these groups that go after and target, and there's complete... it's really scandalous. But talking again, I just wanted to mention, going back to the censorship of the data.
Please.
So you have, and I interviewed several times, an amazing data analyst from the Netherlands. His name is Wouter Okema. And he was able to create a software tool with his team where they were able to download 15 million files from the European Medicine Agency's EudraVigilance, which is the EMA's, EU's basically pharmacovigilance spontaneous reporting system.
Yep.
And they were able to download 50 million files. And what he discovered was essentially the COVID shots. There were 3 times serious adverse events were reported 3 times more for the COVID shots compared to any other medicinal product over 20 years. Okay. But not only that, he also discovered that, so we know there's a lot going on about fatal cases, right? I think just recently in Germany, the former head of Pfizer Europe, who was the toxicologist for Pfizer Europe, didn't he just recently say that in Germany alone, he estimates 20 to 60,000 deaths following the COVID shot. This is based on official reports of only 2,000 being reported, because he said there is a huge underreporting magnitude that goes on. So less than 1% really gets reported. So he times it by 30, and that's where he got the 20 to 60,000 figure. But when I was being interviewed recently, I said, look, not only that, yes, these fatal cases, it's terrible, but you have what's going on, the original evidence that they were ever reported being deliberately destroyed. And this is going back now to Wouter's work. So he found out that 40% of serious adverse events reported in this EudraVigilance, which is directed by the EMA, it comes under the EMA's remit,
European Medicines Agency. Yeah.
Of the COVID shots, 40% of serious adverse events, and serious includes deaths.
Yeah.
It includes deaths, are being systematically, they're getting lost. They're untraceable. Now, it's not that they're being deleted, because in the beginning he thought, oh, they're being deleted. What's happening is that every time the case safety report gets updated with just even a comma, adding some punctuation or removing some, a new case ID number gets generated. Therefore, the original case, gets lost. So it becomes untraceable.
So each case could end up with 10 different reference numbers.
Yes. And it's deliberate.
And you don't know which current reference number relates to which previous reference number.
Yeah. And the only reason why they could be doing this is to make these records untraceable. So you can't audit it, right? It's unauditable, So this is very damning. And following his finding, John, guess what did the EMA, how they approached him? They sent him a letter saying he needs to delete all his data. So again, this is public data, and this isn't data because they use the excuse that, it's to do with
confidentiality or something.
GDPR. Like the idea of like the patient's identity being revealed. But there were no names, no dates of birth, nothing to bring it back, to link it back to the person. And now this will lead me on to my next thing I want to talk about, is what's going on in the UK with the UK's HSA, Health Security Agency.
Yeah.
What are they doing?
Yeah.
They are refusing to release critical data that will link the COVID shots to excess deaths. And what are they using as an excuse? Oh, it's going to be misinterpreted, it'll be used as misinformation, or it will affect the bereaved family's mental health. It will be too distraught. They'll be too distraught.
So finding out why your relative died is too much information for you. You can't cope with that. It'll just make you upset.
Yeah.
We as your overseers know best, and we'll decide whether you get to know what your relative died of or not.
Yeah.
Just an appalling situation, and of course the information related to vaccination status and excess deaths is known. That data has been released to the pharmaceutical companies, but it hasn't been released to statisticians. Independent analysis. The data is hidden. It's just, this data could be released tomorrow with a click of a button, and it's not. It's hidden. Why on earth would the government want to suppress data that relates excess deaths to vaccination status? Why would they want to do that? Surely the government wants to help us, doesn't it?
Yes, well, yeah. Not in the world that we are living in. Maybe in an ideal world.
I know.
Yes, you'd hope.
Is all this, is this internationally coordinated, or is it?
Yes.
What the heck is going on, Sonia?
Yeah. So,
that's a mega question. I know that, but it just,
yes.
I just despair sometimes.
Yeah. So similar things played out in many different countries.
Exactly.
So this is the replication of it. And the book does talk about the coordinated, whether it was the lockdowns, whether you had, Professor Neil Ferguson's, remember his report 9. This is coming out of Imperial College University, London University.
Saying there were massive amounts of deaths from ludicrous, simplistic models.
500,000 in the UK, 2.2 million in the US. If these countries didn't lock down by the summer of 2020, if they didn't mitigate the virus, this would be catastrophic. All of these countries followed suit. They did many. I know we had a U-turn, because I know Boris Johnson, he didn't want to lock down in the beginning. No. He did a U-turn. So his modelling was all flawed, right? It was based on exponential growth of the virus. It was based on case fatality ratio in Wuhan, China.
Yep.
Looking at any other regions.
Which is explained superbly in Claire's book.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, Claire's done a superb job.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you have that report going, in the US, you had the White House going, and it's actually in the New York Times, they're citing a London report out of Imperial College, a catastrophic death. So it was all in the media. And this now brings me to the media's role in all of this. It's not only governments acting alone, John. It's multi-agencies. So you've got lots of different agents. You've got big tech, you've got governments, you've got legacy media, mainstream media, all sort of coordinating together. And how did that come about? Now, the Trusted News Initiative is a network. It cuts across big tech, government, and media, and this is interesting. This goes back to my timeline in the beginning of the book. So March 27th, so just maybe 2 weeks after the pandemic gets declared, this is in 2020, you have the Trusted News Initiative that expands its remit. It goes, we are now going to counter COVID disinformation. COVID's just been declared, right? All of a sudden they must go after the misinformation. And remember, it's what they deem, it's what they qualify as misinformation. It's only their approved narrative that's allowed to be told. So,
single narrative, you can trust us. We'll be your sole source of information.
Yes, exactly.
If I tell you it's true, if anyone else tells you it's not, it's just...
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you have all of the media sort of coming together. And remember when I talked about Event 201 at the beginning of our interview back in 2019? They wanted that to be the big thing, misinformation going after that, because they knew how powerful with social media, with the way information gets passed on rapidly. They wanted to do real-time censorship in real time. This is their nimble approach, if you remember, the way it's classified. So
great euphemism.
So this brings us to the other agents involved. So you've got CCDH coming from the UK. That's the Centre for Countering Digital Hate, which was actually in the papers recently, a lot of controversy around this group. This is a non-governmental organisation.
Such Orwellian titles.
Yes, it is the ideological engine, this is how I describe it in my book, for widespread censorship. And they advise governments on censorship. You have them bragging how they were instrumental in the creation of the UK's Online Safety Act and the EU's Digital Services Act, John. So they also had, if you remember the scandal, the leaked files, how there were these leaked CCDH files where they actually said we need to kill Musk's Twitter, go after X, right? Because they saw that as like very problematic.
Spreading digital hate.
Yes. Because you had people talking about, vaccine harms, and they came out, and I interviewed Sayagyi. Sayagyi is listed in the CCDH's Disinformation Dozen report. This came out, I think it was in 2021. You have Biden at the time, who was head of the US government, saying you've got these dozen people who are deadly. They're the reason people are dying because they're spreading misinformation. So Sayagyi was on the report. RFK Jr., many other scientists were on, and other doctors and scientists are also on this list. And they're saying they're responsible for spreading like 65% of the anti-vaccine sentiment is from this dozen people. So it's like their hit list. And they go after deplatforming, censoring, these key individuals, but not only them, of course. It's any dissenting, anybody talking against lockdowns, against the vaccine. We know in the UK, you have 5 Whitehall units, secretive spy units, including the 77th Brigade, CDU, Countering Digital I mean, the CDU and other units
This
going.
is a branch of the British military, the 77th Brigade, spying on its own citizens.
Yeah, flagging posts that are talking about natural immunity, herd immunity, vaccine harms, all of these things. They're getting flagged, they're getting deplatformed, they're getting censored.
Principles of medicine that we've known about for 100 years.
Exactly. And remember what happened to poor Dr. Martin Kulldorff, right? He got dismissed from Harvard University because he was talking about natural immunity and he refused to get the COVID shot. And his post on natural immunity, this again is in the book, as an exhibit, is flagged. You know, remember you'd make a post and it would get fact checked, or this is spreading misinformation.
Many times, yeah.
His post got, censored. So,
And people believe this. I mean, I had the police came round to my house twice.
wow.
For viable death threats. And one of the emails said, look, something like words to the effect of nothing against you personally, John, but I think you need to be killed because it's better that I kill one man than your disinformation kills thousands and thousands of people.
Oh my goodness.
That's
Terrible. That's awful.
Yeah, they came around twice. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but I mean that it just shows you the way that information gets. I mean, who those death threats came from, I don't know. Presumably, it's just rogue individuals. I mean, but no one's saying those rogue individuals are paid by anyone else, of course.
Yeah.
But we simply don't know. But
Really terrible. Yeah.
well, that went up to the Metropolitan Police Intelligence Unit, and they couldn't work out who the emails were from. So,
Wow.
which is surprising, but there you go.
Yes. I mean, yeah, and also how the vaccine injured groups also. I just wanted to quickly talk.
And the way they were dealt with in the official inquiry, just dear.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I mean, I've mentioned this. It's mentioned in the book again because it's so key because it shows how the TNI Trusted News Initiative operates. So you have the BBC. Don't forget the BBC runs it helms TNI. It's led by it leads TNI. You have them at that time bragging how they were flagging these vaccine injured. These are Facebook accounts of the vaccine injured, and how they were using carrot emojis to circumvent the censors. So BBC come up with an article bragging about how they are flagging these guys, that they're using carrot emojis, and they're telling Facebook, owned by Meta, these accounts need to be brought down.
So when you see a carrot, take the account down.
Exactly. So this is the coordination. This is the network. It's all coming together to go after these groups, to censor them. So they're not only these vaccine injured people, they're getting the trauma is happening twice. Of course, they're getting injured, awful trauma, but they're getting the disbelief, right? It's the compounded trauma.
Well, I mean, we've interviewed many people on this channel with terrible vaccine injuries. Of course, the ones we interviewed are the ones that can still speak.
Yes.
The ones that are no longer with us, we couldn't interview, could we?
And the ones that are no longer with us, the fatal cases, right?
Yeah.
Their governments are refusing to release the data. They're getting deliberately destroyed. Those cases. This is criminal acts are going on.
The data is there, but the government refused to release it.
Yeah.
This is the democratic British government we're talking about here.
Yes. Apparently democratic. Yes. I mean, it goes back to the British government now. So in the book, I also write about NATO's involvement. So you've got not only them involved. Now, this is interesting. You have them doing these pre-bunking video online games. Okay. So this is coming out of NATO. This is being also funded by Whitehall. It's being funded by the UK government, but it's being publicised and promoted and backed by NATO. Are these online viral games like Go Viral. And Go Viral, for example, and I talk about this in the book, it is basically you are inoculating the public against dissent. So you're sort of preconditioning them like, spot the misinformation, spot the conspiracy theory, to then develop so the public becomes more resilient against identity.
Right. So this is not debunking the story after it comes out.
Yes,
it's pre-bunking. That when the truth comes out, the people will think it's false.
Yeah,
that's quite clever.
So this is crazy. So this is coming out of NATO's, I think, strategic operations communication. It's a unit of NATO. I think they're based actually in Latvia, and this is published in their report, in NATO's report, and it's being the actual origins of these games is coming out of Cambridge University. Okay, a lot of yes, there's two scientists involved who are creating these games coming out of Cambridge, some lab in Cambridge University, and it is major psychological operations. But it's
these are like computer games, Sonia, are they?
Yes, so these are online computer games. Yeah,
right.
Games, and so they spot the anti-vaxxer, and it's all about it's really eerie. It's very Orwellian, but it's training people how to think, like what you need to be on your guard about. So it's deep brainwashing, really. It's psychological operations. And also, when I did a Freedom of Information request to DCIT, this is the Department of Science and Innovation and Technology in the UK.
Yep.
I asked for what was NATO's involvement in the UK's COVID-19 vaccine disinformation policy. I want to know all the meetings, all the minutes, all the documents, all the correspondence. And they say, yes, we have these documents, NATO's involved, but we can't tell you because because of national security reasons, and it might be used for misinformation or something crazy. So this is them admitting on record NATO's involvement in the COVID vaccine disinformation policy. Basically, it's their censorship, right? It's how it, yeah. So it really is very, very eerie. And
is there someone like more senior? I mean, I don't want to get into speculation too much, but is there someone more senior like coordinating all this down to these minions who are implementing it? I mean, it sounds like there's an international orchestra that's all playing in time somehow. Who's conducting this?
I mean, it's multi-agency. You've got, World Health Organization, you have the World Economic Forum, you have all of these players involved, all the NGOs. It's a web. It's really like a spider's web, I would say. And you have to sort of unpick all of that. But they really, from the beginning, wanted to bring in this new mRNA technology. They couldn't bring it in because it never got approved. They waited until a crisis. And this is, again, bringing back to my title, 311, okay? So this I make a parallel with 9/11, okay? So 9/11, we have a disruptive event. We have this, that sort of ushers in a global reset. So what we saw with 9/11 and also the anthrax letter attacks that happened just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I remember that. That was a big thing at the time, wasn't it? People receiving white powder in envelopes.
Yes. I talk about that in the final chapter and all the sort of history of that. So we have the Patriot Act coming out of that. We have this mass surveillance of citizens by the state. And we have essentially a crisis being used, fear being weaponized, and then we have expanded powers of the state as a result. Okay.
And justification for a couple of wars.
And justification for the wars, exactly. Now with 3/11, March the 11th, we've got, what do we have there? We have mass citizen compliance with the state.
Yes.
We have complying with all the state measures, all these, the countermeasures, the lockdowns, the stay at home, all of these things. You've got to get the shot. You're going to need your vaccine passports to go to a restaurant, to fly on a plane, okay? We'll get to that as well. So again, you have expanded powers, and again, you have this weaponization of fear, which is really the key tool used in a psychological operation, in a military operation. Okay, you arrest people's critical thinking skills. You make them so afraid they are willing to do anything. Please just tell me what to do. They're so afraid. And this is the main reason why I wrote the book, John, is to wake people up to that, to not be afraid. The antidote to all of this is knowledge and truth. When you have that, you don't need to be afraid. So, we know they're preparing something next, right? We have just a few weeks ago, the UK pledging to spend £1 billion of taxpayers' money on pandemic preparedness strategy. And that will bring in more sweeping emergency powers and all of these things. And, all these stockpiling and all of this going on. So it's not, and they say it's not a matter of like it happening. It's going to happen. It's not if.
Oh yes, when.
It's going to happen. It's just when it's going to happen.
And this is to expand the control and manipulation of the population, basically.
And this is where the final chapter really does rest on this rise of digital authoritarianism that we're seeing across the West.
Yeah.
And I've written about this extensively. So you have the vaccine passports play a critical tool in this, right? Because that's what we saw happen out of the pandemic. We've got, vaccine passports, these QR codes. Every country had something similar, right? Every country. And you have people complying, giving up their civil liberties, giving up their freedoms to earn their freedoms by
to earn the freedom to travel, to earn the freedom to go out for a meal.
Yeah. And we know that was the key tool they used to push people, coerce people into getting these experimental COVID shots, was to go on holiday. And many people took it to go on holiday.
I've had probably thousands and thousands of people tell me that.
Yeah. So what did we see? So we saw vaccine passports being used as proof of concept, as a gateway to usher in digital IDs. Okay, so this is the landscape we're in now, particularly in our own country. We have consultations going on right now, the UK government, with digital IDs. They did a quiet U-turn a few months ago because there was such backlash against it. I think over 3 million signatures, online petitions that, they don't, they want it debated in Parliament. So this is what's going on.
Well, that was only the frontal attack, though. It's coming in via this way and that way,
Yes.
I mean, we already actually have digital ID, really.
Yeah.
To a large extent.
Yeah. And then what you have also with AI, you have this mass surveillance powered by AI, which is very, very Orwellian.
Yes.
And this is a real danger of that. So with your phone, going out, where you're shopping, what you're buying, what you're spending your money on. I mean, it really is. That's when we get into real dystopian land, is that. And
then the AI can monitor millions and millions of people simultaneously.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I see COVID really being the test that was used to test people's compliance.
That starts to make a bit more sense now, yeah. So individuals who want to control.
Yeah.
So really, I mean, if we could answer what all this was about in 2 words, it would be the control agenda. Is that too crude?
Control and power, and of course, money plays into that. But control and power, I think, is more, is the end game here. And I mean, to have a free you see. I believe we have God-given rights, our freedom,
Absolutely.
And they do want to take that away. It's like, no, you need to earn that. You have to comply to be able to go here, travel there. And this goes against a democratic, essentially democracy. The cornerstone foundation of democracy is freedom, right?
It's become the word's become a mockery, hasn't it? Really,
it does. It absolutely has. And again, I think the antidote to all of this is knowledge and truth, and that's again one of the key reasons of writing this book in such I mean, I spent obviously quite a few years writing it, but it's meticulously researched, it's
It is.
evidence-based,
Totally.
because it was never on my assumption, writing just on conjecture, or it's up to the reader to decide, but here is the evidence that I have found, that I've compiled painstakingly, and it's up to the reader to decide for themselves, because I do not have an agenda to push on to people. It's just I'm just documenting, I'm chronicling, and I'm doing the investigative journalism that should have been done, right? I mean,
Well, that should have been done by the mainstream media. We've been let down by them as much as by governments, really. I mean, a free press is essential for a free functioning democratic society, and we don't have it.
yeah. And just want to even again, just a little key example of the
Please.
regulatory is, for example, I think James C. Smith, who's on Pfizer's board, is also on the board of Reuters, right? Runs Reuters. So again, you have this capture going on. You have these conflicts of interest. I mean, we know CNN, for example, so many ads, brought to you by Pfizer. So again, there is no independent media, right? It doesn't, of course, people, thank God there's alternative media, the rise of that, grassroots journalism, citizen journalism, and all of that, and podcasts like yours.
Without that, I think we probably already have lost. I think they would have had the control that they're looking for. It's only the ability to access independent thinkers such as yourself and Dr. Craig and people like that have kept us away from this dystopian control. Without that, if we got a news from the BBC and the British government, the current government at least, I don't think we'd be doing very well.
Yeah.
So it's just as well that technology came along when it did. And of course, this is the big battle now, to control this technology, because we don't want people thinking for themselves, do we?
Absolutely. And what do we have now? We've got the whole under 16s being banned from social media. They always use it. Now, the last chapter is called For Your Safety, right?
Yeah.
Because this is the banner. This is the guise they use. For your safety. Everything we're doing is to keep you safe.
Yeah. We know what's best. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
Yeah, we know what's best. We know how to parent your children.
Yeah.
The government wants to parent the kids.
Yeah.
And it's essentially to ID people to get onto the internet. We are going to see this control of the internet, because that's what they're really worried about, I think, is this independent, this free, World Wide Web essentially being controlled, ultimately controlled.
We don't want human beings communicating with each other, for goodness sake.
Yes. Because the truth spreads, right? And they don't want the truth spreading.
And people recognise it when they see it.
Yeah.
And they recognise... And we have a core of good people who do recognise good science and good medicine and good journalism and good economics. And, they are there. And at the moment, they are joining up and networking, and that's a further threat, of course.
Yes.
If we have organised resistance, we don't want that.
Yeah.
Don't mourn for me, organisation is the key, and we must disrupt any organisation that's coming along if we're to retain power. It's classic divide and rule strategy, isn't it, really?
Absolutely. And I mean, again, also with these things that they put in, these sort of bans, it's so easy to get hacked. A lot of this data, again, with bringing it back to digital ID, if everything's in one, on your phone, all your medical records, or your everything to do with your private records being in one portal, it can get hacked, and everyone's private information being leaked. I mean, it really is,
And then analysed by AI.
Yeah, and it's all data mining, right? They're all after everyone's data.
Oh yeah, it's there for sure. Sonia, so much more we could talk about, but that's the book. Very, very tight, readily available. We'll put some links.
Yes.
It's tight, but it's readable. It's not hard work at all. I
think it's quite a page turner. I think people, they say
it really is.
But it's jam packed with
and the references. I mean, there's like page. In fact, I'll check how many references there is. I think there's
941.
Yeah.
I know. It's seared into my brain.
She's right. It's 941. Sonia, thank you so much. Bless you. Bless your work.
Thanks so much.
And
your work too.
I expect we'll have lots of comments on this. And if you'd like to come back at some future point, and we'll discuss other points in more detail that we've just skated over tonight. But
Yes.
for now, late on a Saturday night, thank you so much for giving up your time. And
Thank you, John.
yeah,
Thank
we will talk again soon. I would hope.
That would be brilliant.
Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.